Just last month, the administration said it knew just how to reunite immigrant children that they had ripped from their parents. And then today, they were proven wrong. Homeland Security said in June, quote, "The United States government knows the location of all the children in its custody and is working to reunite them with their families," adding, "This process is well coordinated." But in court today, the government said it would fail to meet a Tuesday deadline to reunite children under 5 with their parents. Adding to the difficulty is confusion over how many children need to be reunited. Last week, the government said there were 101 such children, that's children under 5, in their custody taken from their parents. Then the number rose to 102, leaving one to wonder, where did the other kid come from? Today, the government said in 6 cases, the adults have criminal histories or aren't really the children's parents. As Vox reported, the ACLU says there might be, quote, as many as 10 additional separated children the government has not included on its list. Now, the government expects to reunite maybe half or a little more of those young children, that's the kids under 5, by tomorrow's court order deadline. We don't even know for sure how many older kids remain to be reunited because the government still will not say exactly how many children are in custody they took from their parents. And that does not bode well for the July 26th deadline to reunite those kids, up to 3,000 of them. Congressman Dan Kildee, a Democrat of Michigan, visited a facility where some immigrant children are held last week. He joins me here in New York tonight. So the government basically said, they had this court order that said, kids under 5, there's about 100 of them, you got to reunite them in 2 weeks, and then you have another 2 weeks to do the full 3,000.
Right.
They're going to miss the deadline. They're going to probably get an extension. Are you confident that they know what they're doing and they're trying hard enough?
I'm confident that they do not know what they're doing. When I visited the facility in Grand Rapids, Michigan, I spoke to some of the caseworkers there who are responsible for managing these cases of these children. They were spending time on the telephone calling every federal detention facility that they could find a telephone number for to try to track down the parents of the kids that are under their care. They couldn't get the answer from the federal government themselves, from the office. They were calling the detention centers to try to locate parents.
Wait a second. The caseworkers, this is Bethany Christian Services, it's in Michigan.
Right.
You visited there. They have some tender-age children under
They
5
did.
that's
I
in this
saw
set.
Maybe a dozen or so.
Kids under 5?
Yes.
So what you're telling me is those caseworkers are affirmatively just cold calling detention centers, attempting to locate parents. It's not some central thing coming from HHS where they're making the matches.
No, and I will say this, that agency, they're trying hard. It looks like the kids are being well cared for. Privately, all of them said, these kids do not belong here. They shouldn't be here. They should be with their parents. I mean, I spoke to the extent that I could with a little boy who was probably 3 or 4 years old. And when I walked into the room where he was sitting, he looked up at me as if, I wonder if this will be mom or dad. I mean, it just breaks your heart to see these kids torn from their parents. They don't know where their parents are. They don't know what's happening. I worked in this field. I worked in the child welfare system. I know something about the trauma that children face who have been taken away from their parents. I worked every day to try to get them back into an intact family. And that trauma, they will live with that trauma for the rest of their lives. In this case, they were taken away from the one person, perhaps, that they knew cared so much about them that they were willing to sacrifice everything to try to save them from the violence that they were facing back home. They were taken from that one person by the government. The worst thing about this entire story is that the Trump administration made this decision to separate these children as a tactic because they thought it would work to prevent others from seeking shelter and asylum in the United States of America. Shame on them. Think about the morality behind a tactic to tear a child away from their parent because they think it might dissuade someone else from coming to the shores of the United States, to cross this border to try to find some degree of security and safety for their children. Shame on them.
Is Congress, I mean, so I'm watching the government sort of say, well, we got it under control, and then doing a little hide the ball in the numbers and doing these court filings, missing a deadline. Again, this is 100 out of as many as 3,000, right? They can't make a 2-week deadline. They get 50 of them. Is Congress going to do anything about this?
Well,
shouldn't there be some very serious oversight being exercised right now?
There should be. And of course, our visit to the center was one way of exercising that oversight. I will tell you, it took a long time to be able to get that appointment scheduled. And some of my colleagues now, I saw that Congressman Mark DeSaulnier in California tried to get into one of these facilities, was turned away. we're not able to do our jobs and exercise oversight because the administration is telling these agencies, don't let members of Congress in.
I feel like this is bipartisan at this point. I mean,
It is.
there are, like, Republicans have been turned away as well, and it seems to me that Congress should be holding hearings where HHS and where Nielsen and Azar have to come before and actually tell the truth about what is going on.
Absolutely. And you know, obviously, one of the problems that we see is that the Republican leadership in this Congress have their arms so tightly wrapped around Donald Trump's ankles that they will not do anything that upsets him.
Ankles. Congressman Dan Kildee, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Some time.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.